Hey everyone, welcome to the GM Yearbook. I'm Matt.
And I'm Jim. Welcome to our latest episode of Album Anniversaries. If you're listening to the show, you know we're playing a game of catch up to make sure the show is released in August. So we've got 3 episodes in a row. We'll get back to the subjects at some point, but we're having a lot of fun digging into music that we're kind of nostalgic about.
Yes, we are. We've covered June and July in the previous 2 episodes, and finally here we are in August. Each month we're going to cover albums having big anniversaries, starting 25 years back and going back 5 years at a time, covering the years, as Jim already said, in our lifetime. We're getting old, so this means we'll go back 50 years. You know, we're not going to go back any further than that.
To make it a little more fun for everyone, we have a Facebook private group that we have started a poll in, and we asked the audience what albums they want to hear us talk about on the show. So while there are probably plenty of other album anniversary podcasts out there, we're going to let the listeners decide the best 5 albums celebrating this month. And those are what we will discuss.
And Jim and I are each going to have our own pick. We'll each have an album celebrating a big anniversary that maybe was part of the poll or maybe not. We'll have to see if we liked what everybody chose, if we had a favorite that we wanted to put out there for the audience and they hung it out to dry on us.
So keep this in mind, Matt. I know you were sweating bullets this week because you might have had to listen to one of the Disney princesses.
Oh, yeah.
Over to you, audience. If you want, you can vote for an album that you know we are really not going to want to listen to. And we'll have to come back and report on it. And Matt's not allowed to just come and be a dick about it.
Yeah, we didn't think that went through well.
Yeah. We almost had something this week that would have actually been quite difficult, I think, for you.
Yeah, Christina Aguilera. That would have been like driving ice pick into my eardrums. Oh my God, my very soul. I cannot thank the pollsters enough. Thank you very much. We'll acknowledge it. Yeah, Christina Aguilera. Didn't have to listen to it. Yay. And there was much rejoicing. She had some really early votes, and I thought we were screwed. And we were actually kind of tossing back this idea of having a bet, and the loser was going to have to listen to that. And I did not pursue that line of questioning because I didn't want to take the chance on losing. Search histories do not recover overnight, Jim.
We escaped. We escaped. We're good to go. So when we do start, we're going to start at number 5 that was voted on in the poll, and we're going to count down to the number 1 anniversary album for August as decided by this Facebook group. So come give us a look. Join us.
And a reminder that everyone and anyone are welcome to join the group. We've set it private to keep the spammers away.
We got to do it. So one of Matt's favorite subjects that we used to have as a part of every one of our episodes was the birthdays. Matt could go on for 15 minutes saying happy birthday.
Because I was a completist and I didn't want to offend people and cut somebody off.
So spoiler alert, the next 2 people we're going to talk about made their debuts and they're celebrating anniversaries. And we think it's worth mentioning. Both are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I'm going to break our rule that I probably set at the beginning, and this one wasn't in our lifetimes. The Stooges, they had their debut in 1969. Detroit Motown will forever be synonymous, but there was something else brewing other than that nice, sheeny, soulful music. There was Grand Funk Railroad, Frigid Pink, and proto-punk bands like MC5 and the Stooges. This was the raw underbelly of Detroit emerging. The big song, I Want to Be Your Dog, is probably the one they're most known for. There's a strong psychedelic and primal feel to this album. What may be surprising is there are some nods to the Doors. Even the album cover is kind of reminiscent of their album cover, their debut. And the songs, We Will Fall and Anne, are begging for a Morrison vocal.
Now, listen, Matt. You started us right away on this show in 1969.
Fuck you, Jim.
So you realize I could spend the next half hour talking about Woodstock, August 19, or I could talk
69
about,
or
exactly.
94.
Or the Beatles, Abbey Road. I go on about that.
That's next month. Why are you going on about the Beatles?
Fine. Fine.
You're right, but I just had to pay some love to the Stooges.
Okay, so there's Matt being selfish right away. We have an
No,
audience decide what we're going to talk about. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to tell you about the
no.
Stooges. So I'm just going to mention Pat Benatar, 1979, within the parameters of the show, her debut album, In the Heat of the Night. Pat Benatar actually went into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame recently, and she is just a phenomenal woman of rock and roll. I never realized how much this album, though, was covers until I started looking a little further into it. But the classic track, Heartbreaker, that is a rock song that has stood the test of time.
Oh, it's a mainstay. It's still being played today. And other than that John Cougar cover, none of these really registered that they weren't like her songs because I got limited Alan Parsons Project exposure and never heard of Smokey before. I hadn't
Who's
really heard
Smokey?
that Sweet song before, but kind of remind me of Linda Ronstadt used to do a lot of covers too, or renditions, I should
Yeah,
say.
I think that was something that was probably common at the time to do that.
Hmm,
But hey, her original song that she produced in the studio with a couple of different songwriters, but I think there are people that she worked with over the course of her career. Heartbreaker.
classic. All right, let's get on with the poll winners then. We'll start off with Red Hot Chili Peppers' Mother's Milk.
Number 5.
Five.
We're counting down again.
Oh
Remember
my
those days?
God. Yeah, yeah, I kind of miss those days actually. Finally, Jim, I can have something positive to say about the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I feel like I feel like I've just been beating up on them. This is the first album with Chad and John. Hold on, it sounds like I know them. They're Chad Smith, John Frusciante. You know, they just brought a different energy. It still blows me away that Frusciante's only 18 when he was writing and recording these songs. The rest of the guys are 8 years older than him. Every time he's in the band, it's like they feel they got to up their game
Yeah.
because the he is on.
Yep.
Recently, we were bitching about the Peps having albums that are just too damn long. They do not have that problem here. I love it all. It's 13 songs, but they're all short. And they ended with one of my favorites, Johnny Kick a Hole in the Sky. That song makes me feel like they're just getting started. It was a great way to end it on a high note.
I have to admit, I jumped on the Chili bandwagon with Blood Sugar Sex Magic, but I always liked the Stevie Wonder Higher Ground cover when I was younger. But as I grew older and became a bigger Stevie Wonder fan, I preferred the original more than theirs. The cover of the Jimi Hendrix Fire, the cover of Jimi Hendrix's Fire is also epic. And I think it shows how skilled Frusciante really was as an 18-year-old. Uh-oh, Matt's holding up a timeout sign.
Yeah, sorry, I got to be that guy. This
Uh-oh.
is Hell and Jack Irons, from
Oh,
the
really?
original lineup. Yeah, they took this
Wow.
fire this version from the Abbey Road EP they had on. It was just to honor Hillel Slovak.
I never knew that. Cool. So it really goes to show maybe what they lost when they lost Hillel. But I would say the most well known and a great 1-2 punch for songs on the album for me were Knock Me Down and Taste the Pain. Taste the Pain is swanky and funky at the same time. And that's kind of what the Chili Peppers do best. I think these guys were definitely writing better songs when they were closest to their struggles with drugs. And that's probably an unfortunate statement, but this album shines. And when I was listening to it this week, I was thinking, this really is the debut of the Chili Peppers that we know today.
Yes, it is, and it really is. They're not alone because it really is a shame that some kind of addiction usually produces a band's best art, and part of that probably ties into the youth too,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep.
We've had that conversation. Bands will have their best material when they're just starting out, and I'll be honest. The only reason why I dug into this album was because of Higher Ground. I started hearing it. Right. This really wasn't being played in the circles I was hanging out with. But as soon as I heard that, I'm like, yeah, this is fucking great. But you're right. After getting more familiar with Stevie Wonder, and I don't want to be that guy that says, it just doesn't hold up because it still does. It's its own thing.
You're just gonna,
Yeah.
yeah, appreciate Stevie a little bit more once you get into Stevie Wonder.
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
where that is.
Hmm.
All right, I'm going to move us along, and I am going to bring up the Portishead album Dummy. This is number 4. I'm really happy this made the show. I think this album is the hidden gem of the show for anybody who's not familiar with it. This album is not a case of throwing it on at a party while everybody's socializing, trying to get down or something happening. Well, depends on the kind of party you're at, more like a cocktail party. To the opposite, this is one of the best moments of solitude or background music albums I have ever listened to. And Portishead were kind of on my radar when I came over here in 1996, 1997 for the first time. But I didn't really understand them because I think I was still party Jim, and people were like, oh, quiet down, listen to this. And that was not who I
Yeah.
was at the
Yeah.
time. But deep diving in this show has really helped me nerd out on music. And I loved listening to how this album was made. They're classified as trip hop. I'm still not sure what that means, but they recorded all of the music parts they wanted to sample on the album and pressed it to vinyl themselves to get authentic but original sounds of music. And then they took the vinyl and they distressed it by walking around on it on the floor, like trying to make it as old as possible, as
Hmm.
quickly as possible, so that you would kind of hear that scratchiness when you put it on the record player, when you put it on the deck. And I think that the overall creation of the album and doing things this way really adds to the atmosphere you can hear on it.
This was a surprise to me. Again, like you, Portishead really wasn't on my radar. I mean, I heard of them, but I'm not really hearing a lot of them on the radio. So I was really surprised they made the list from the poll, but I'm really happy they did because it kind of forced me to get out of certain boxes that I've been in. It's not a rave album.
It is not.
It is not a rave album. It's one of those ones that grabs my attention and kind of makes me want to focus on it. And makes me want to go record shopping too, because it's like every album I hear being played in a record store, it's usually some kind of hip
This is
hoppy,
definitely
jazzy kind of
this is
thing.
definitely background music for your record shopping.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it totally is. But I dig it. It was a really cool listen this week.
All right, Matt. Now we talk about, little envelopes or boxes that you fit into. We are going to talk about Motley Crue, Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah, that box has no barbershop because we're going all hair metal right here,
We
folks.
are.
Yeah, Dr. Feelgood.
And we all know you're the hair metal guy. I'm Jimmy Jam, but you're Matt Hair Metal. And
Mullet Matt. Mullet
Mullet
Matt.
Matt, there we go. I was wondering this week if this album might have been a little more influential in my life and significant to me, because you had just graduated high school and this comes out in August, a couple of months later. But I'm about to go into my senior year of high school. And those soundtracks to life definitely, shine during your senior year.
Mm. I thought this was going to be an easy conversation because my initial reaction was that this was the cherry on top of the hair metal Sunday. Like it was the final, hey, we're out the door now. See you later. For Motley Crue, it kind of was because everything was downhill after Dr. Feelgood. Maybe a bit before for the genre, it was kind of cresting, maybe just going over that peak.
Mm-hmm.
I was for sure the end of anything Motley Crue did would be worth a damn as far as new music. But there was still some excitement for hair in 1989. We had debuts of Skid Row, Warrant, Extreme, and Mr. Big, and they're debuting just prior to Dr. Feelgood. While Extreme's debut didn't make a whole lot of noise, sophomore album certainly did, and that's 1990, as well as 1990 Warrant's Cherry Pie. So the torch was still carrying on for a little while longer.
When I say genres peak, it doesn't mean that there isn't great stuff on the way up
Yes.
and also on the way back down.
Hmm.
You just have a little bit less of it. And of those bands that you just mentioned, I did actually think about this because I saw that you'd put these in the notes. And I thought, well, other than Skid Row, though, maybe they were the only ones that had a audience with heavy music. Those other bands, Warrant, kind of will give you Cherry Pie. I'm all right with that. But Extreme, Mr. Big, and even some Warrant with what did they do? Did they do Heaven?
Yes. Oh, and we probably got Slaughter in here somewhere too.
We probably do. But these bands were big because of ballads at this
Oh,
point.
100%. Well, Skid
Whereas
Row too. I mean, 18 in Life.
Youth Gone Wild, though, is
Yeah, but
just as
18 in
hard.
Life was what made them, that made them bank. And Slave to the Grind, they, their second record, that thing was hard.
Yeah, it was. It was.
It was a lot harder than their debut. But as far as influential, um, maybe it was significant because it was so damn incredible. This is a great album. I would say the debut and Shadow of the Devil were more influential to me, if anything, because that's when I'm starting to get into that genre. And it kind of felt like my high school years got extended with Dr. Feelgood because it still kept the good times rolling. Immediately, I heard a much fuller sound, more low end, bigger, beefier drums. The intro, Tommy's beat was kick ass on Dr. Feelgood. That song is amazing.
Yeah.
And Mick Mars is at his best with riffing. He's not, he can do four chord rock, but man, heavy metal guitar riffs, he is one of the best. He's always had great ones. And maybe because of his health issues and not allowing him to run around and be expressive, his playing maybe gets a little undervalued. Kickstart My Heart will always have a spot on playlists that I make. Again,
Mhm.
riffs and attitude. Great driving song to get a speeding ticket to. Ask me, I know. Nikki Sixx was at his writing peak, and the band at their peak of talent and creativity. Really, through the years, more members got involved in the writing, but Nikki was the main source, especially lyrically. They claim to be clean and sober when they were recording this. Only they know the truth. Um, and they had this album be their sole focus, no distractions.
You're right about Mick Mars. And I think we discussed this in a previous episode. He was totally underrated as a guitar player in the 80s as part of that hair metal scene. I think the biggest, obstacle that he faced was that Nikki Sixx was a sex symbol and Tommy Lee was a sex symbol. Vince Neil, he was a little cartoonish as he was, but Mick Mars kind of looked like their dad came out on stage to play with them.
Yeah, kind
And
of like they dug up their dead dad
yeah,
a little bit.
it's kind of a shame that, in the age of video killed the radio star, if Mick Mars had not been in a band with all those other beautiful men, he might not have ever been heard.
Oh, right here, Jim, beautiful man. Love it. But Mick had some bluesy moments. It's not just all metal. The intro for Rattlesnake Shake, Without You's got a lot of great, bluesy riffs here and there. There's a lot of different guitar layers.
Oh yeah, the production was also really improved over the entire album compared to their prior stuff.
Yeah, and I know you got your love-hate thing with Bob Rock, but he was a right fit to produce him. Never thought I'd hear horns on a Motley Crue record. I usually rail against bands maturing too much, and they are mature here. Their early stuff was more raw, which is normal, still clean, but raw. I'd put this is probably like my third favorite Crue record, just because of the influence the first two had on my life. And there are some dead spots on Theater and Girls, Girls, Girls. Feel Good just flows from beginning to end. It's everything and everyone working together. And this is their first number one album, so I'm not wrong thinking that this album is great. You know, and each album they put out up to this point outperformed the previous one. 5 singles: Dr. Feelgood, Kickstart My Heart, Without You, Don't Go Away Mad, Just Go Away. Great song. Same Old Situation. It is a great way for hair metal to maybe start its decline by having one of your flag bearers putting out their best record.
And I will say that She Goes Down probably would have been a hit too if it wasn't too inappropriate for radio. But we loved it and we sang along to it.
Yes, we
She
did.
goes down, down,
She goes
down.
down.
Yeah. Hey,
I'll even forgive them for having Steven Tyler sing on this record.
Hey, Steven Tyler was cool in 1989. So
Yeah, he was.
yeah.
Yeah,
We're
he
going to
was.
talk about him next month, but we'll leave that there on the table. All
Yes.
right. Enough hair metal from Matt because I think we could probably do a hair metal. We've never done a hair metal episode. We've always talked about it. One of these days, we need to do a hair metal episode and a Jim Jams episode
Yeah,
where
because
I interview Matt about all the hair metal stuff. And then in another
oh,
episode, he comes back to me and interviews me about all the Jim Jam stuff. And we take those years from when we're 13 to, 18, 19 and just cram them in.
that would be good because I think what's always like made me hesitant about doing a hair metal episode is I need guardrails. I need parameters set up because I'll go on a tangent and I'll just go over the whole Kiss family tree when we were actually just talking about fucking Judas Priest
Rat.
or Rat,
Rat.
right? But I'll wind it. I'll find some way to wind it back to the Kiss, and I'll even go backwards, forwards from the middle out to both ends.
Wait till you hear my new edition family tree. That we can bring that to the show. So so let's move on.
Move on. Michael Jackson off the wall.
Yeah. I gotta throw my hands up and admit I never dug back deep into this album. I think I have it on vinyl because I bought it used at one point and just was like, oh, I want to put that in my collection. If I'd ever heard the entire thing, it would have been the environment I was in when I was 7 years old at the time. Of course, radio couldn't help either one of us probably from knowing Rock With You or Don't Stop Till You Get Enough.
Stop till you get enough. That song is still so fantastic. I
Yeah.
love that song. But we're in the same boat. Aside from those two songs and all of Thriller, that's probably all the Michael Jackson I need in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'll yeah. I don't hate Michael Jackson. It's just that there's so much more out there that I'd rather listen to.
Yeah, there's a lot. But going back to Don't Stop Till I Get Enough, you know that percussion sound that plays throughout the entire
That little
thing.
like
Dun,
tink
dun,
tink tink
dun, dun,
tink.
dun, 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 dun,
Yep.
dun, dun, and that's kind of the rhythm that it's playing through it. So, I do my deep dives on the album and I'm trying to read who does what, where. And I wanted to look this up because I actually thought this was a cowbell at first. And there are websites out there that attribute this as one of the greatest cowbell songs of all time. It's not a cowbell. I always thought it was until I deep dived. It's an uncredited Sheila E. I saw an interview with her where she talked about Quincy calling her, come down to the studio, help out. And Michael was known for making noises into a recorder. These are the rhythms I want, the music I'm making, the sound I wanted. And he played this rhythm to her. So she came up with this idea to take Coke bottles, empty them out, or empty Coke bottles that were around, and she filled them with water and tuned them to make that sound.
Oh, that's so
So
cool.
that rhythm sound you hear all through Don't Stop Till I Get Enough is Sheila E playing on some soda bottles, glass soda bottles. And yeah, I love that kind of studio ingenuity. This album is also very disco, though.
Oh, yes. This is very poppy, very disco. I don't think anyone is paying attention, myself included, but the Jackson 5 are still putting out records. They put out their last Motown record in 75, then their first for CBS in 76, and they dropped the five, just went by the Jacksons. They dipped their toes into disco here and there, and maybe Michael heard something that clicked with him. And I'll admit to a weird curiosity for trying to focus on this album was listening to this older stuff and kind of going in and up and up and up until I could hear that change in his voice to see to see when it really actually kind of took off. And it was right around this time.
It was. This is when he did find his voice. But I'll also say when it comes to his music, Louis Johnson is to credit or blame, if you will, for the disco sound.
Oh, that
Yeah,
bastard, huh?
yeah, he was part of the Johnson Brothers, if you've ever heard of them. They were their own funk band, but he was a renowned session bassist known for his slapping style.
Hmm.
Leo Fender made a custom Stingray bass just for him. You've heard him on tracks, but by Jeffrey Osborne. Come on, Michael McDonald, That's Lewis playing on Keep Forgetting. And in case the kids out there don't know that song by Michael McDonald, you have definitely heard him on Warren G's Regulate. It's that bass line that grooves that entire song. Paul McCartney, he's played with, Phil Collins. Oh, and you're going to hear him a few years after Off the Wall when he plays Billie Jean and some of those other great tracks off of Thriller. Lewis Johnson, maybe another unspoken session player who is propping up huge artists. That's another episode we need to down the road. What session players made artists bigger than they would have been without them.
Kind of like a Wrecking Crew episode.
Yeah,
Kind of.
yeah.
I love this is deep dive Jim. I love this. So moving on, Oasis. Definitely maybe. What's your deep dive on this then?
Okay, well, I mean, definitely one of the most seminal and divisive bands from the generation over here in the UK. And I keep my mouth shut most of the time when people want to trash Oasis because I just don't feel like arguing with them about it. But I think most people blame this on the personalities of Liam and Noel. Do they borrow sounds? Yes. But it's funny how some bands get labeled as thieves and some as influenced. And I do want to really try to think that Oasis was the latter.
Yeah, it's always been kind of like a soap opera with them. And I never really heard this being a thing with them, the whole stealing. And then I had to listen and kind of do a little researching and research first so I know kind of what songs to go to. But yeah, count me as one of those ones that just got tired of the antics. Because
Mm-hmm.
I just gonna get some hate mail on this one, but I don't really have any problems with it. But Britpop never really endeared itself to me. I just didn't get it. Probably, being US centric, it just wasn't in my wheelhouse. I've never had somebody try to explain it to me, that just the popularity. I can understand someone from England having there's a national pride about it. Awesome. Love it. We got Noah Khan here in Vermont. We're like pro Noah Khan. Don't say anything bad about him. Like I get it and I respect it. Being on that ground floor with some of these bands goes a long way. So forgive me if some of my comments are a little harsh. Yeah, hold on. I feel like I'm just a little bit of an outsider here. So I'm kind of rambling because I am trying to parse my words, because one day I heard Wonderwall, loved it, but then I couldn't turn on the damn radio without hearing Champagne Supernova.
Mm-hmm.
Neither are from Definitely Maybe, by the way, but Definitely Maybe influence, it can't be helped on a Shaker Maker. I'd like to buy the world a Coke, man. That'd be the first time
Na,
I'd,
na, na, na,
yeah,
na, na,
it'd be the first time I'd heard of someone being influenced by the New
na.
Seekers, for crying out loud.
You're
You know,
right.
I,
Yeah.
and I've read tons of bands being influenced by Mark Bolan and T Rex. Cigarettes and Alcohol is a little bit too close to Bang a Gong, though. Come on, man. For a split second on that guitar intro, I thought it was going to be Barracuda because they put this phaser effect on the guitar. But no, thankfully, I was spared from them butchering Barracuda and they went to Bang a Gong. I'll retract that statement. I'm not going to say butchering because they probably would have done a kick ass version of Barracuda. It doesn't make me think less of them because I don't really think I had much of an opinion to begin with.
Matt, if there's one thing that I know you like is a rags to riches story of bands who weren't given a silver spoon and had to work to get to where they were. And deep diving Oasis, we did have a conversation about it earlier this week, but I'm going to just bring it to the show. Honestly, I think any of our British listeners would know this, but maybe the Americans need to find this out. Yeah, Oasis, they were kind of dicks. And I think it was when they came over to America, Liam and Noel, just they walked around with a bit of attitude, and Liam kind of had this anti-American sentiment, but I think that was birthed out of the battle of grunge versus Britpop that was going on. And so, the two fingers in the air to America because what we're doing over here is our thing was what was happening. And it was their own movement. But what's cool about Oasis is that these guys grew up on, in the projects, what we would call a scheme over here, social housing, living with their mom. and Noel became a roadie for a band called In Spiral Carpets. This band's pretty well known over here, and I do remember hearing about them in the States, but I don't think they ever had a big hit. But they were touring. Noel went out with them, and Liam had a band that he was playing with back home. Noel came home from being on tour, saw Liam's band at a practice one night, and said, "Look, I want to join your band. You have to give me creative control, and I'm going to take this band to the top of the world." The guys got together, they played, they gigged around Manchester a bit, they got to know people in the scene. There was a band, I forget the name of this band. I think it was a girl group, and they got booked to play at King Tut's Wawa Hut in Glasgow. And this is a small club. We're talking maybe 500 people max. You're going to fit inside here. It's not 800. It's not 1,000. It's a good music venue, but it's not huge. This band that they were going to hit the road with and go up with didn't have enough music to play an entire set. So they turned to Liam and Noel's band and said, "Do you guys want to come up and play the second half of the set? Because we don't have enough music." The guy said, "Yeah, we'll come along." They were going to do anything, play anywhere. They got up there. They played probably the 4 or 5 songs that they were going to get to fit into the set that night. And a guy from a major label was there in King Tut's Wawa Hut, saw them perform, and signed them that night. Just some guys off the street. So this types of rags to riches story is so up your alley.
It is.
Yeah, you love that.
I do. And if you are in that rags part of your life, I can also see how when you get some level of fame or notoriety or money, you either got a chip on your shoulder or you're going to have a big defense up
Mm-hmm.
to kind of shield
Yeah.
yourself. So I can see how some of the bad behavior could have
Yeah,
originated.
and
You
and
know what I
and
mean?
cocaine's a hell of a drug, and I'm sure that had something to do with it.
Yes, it is,
Yeah.
Rick.
Two of my favorite songs, though, back to the album that I loved were Supersonic and Married with Children. You've already brought up a few. Supersonic to me kind of oozes that attitude, and I think it does capture the band personality. Britpop was powered early on by angst similar to the frustration and anger that accompanied American grunge. I think British people are more inherently polite about it. Excuse me, I'm angry.
Yeah, but it was like, I'm angry, but I also know you're
Yeah,
angry. So let's just do something to have fun with it.
exactly. Supersonic, it's their first big sing along song, just like Wonderwall and Champagne Supernova is going to become on their next album. The other song, Married with Children, is a great little closer after all of the noisy ruckus. I remember the first time I heard it, I thought somebody had actually changed the album. I thought something else had gone on, and I was, oh, who's this? It wasn't long before it joined my inner Rolodex of songs that I was going to play if he handed me a guitar.
Did Liam write Married with Children for
No,
Noel?
no, Noel wrote everything.
Even the
Yes.
lyrics. Oh, so he got Liam to tell himself to fuck off in this song right here. That's next level cold hearted genius
It
right
is.
there. And Up in the Sky, one more rip. There is a vocal that is very reminiscent of Rain by the Beatles. I almost put that song in Audacity. I wanted to slow it down and pitch shift it so that it would sound right, just to see if it all fit alongside with Rain. And the guitar part in there, it kind of took the place of that bass riff in Rain.
Thinking about their songwriting, they probably put that song into something and pitch shifted it into where they wanted to hear it and come out the way that it did as Up in the
Oh,
Sky.
that's the hey, doesn't mean it's not
No,
creative.
but it's interesting that you say that though, because the original name of Oasis was Rain.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? That is interesting. I feel like I should be researching these bands a little bit more before we come on here. Sorry, I must be getting lazy. Facts interfere with my precious opinions and all that. Um,
I'm not reading.
I,
I already know.
I know it sounds like I'm coming down on them, but after a few listens this week, even with the influences, I got a little closer to being an Oasis fan because I couldn't deny the execution of the songs, regardless of I'm not going to say borrowing, but depending on your level of influence with them, these are still really good songs. They execute them well. They play it with enthusiasm. It's got the right amount of rock,
Mhm.
sloppiness, rawness. There's not one song I had to skip. I think my defense is that they really didn't break into the States until Morning Glory. And when I learned there was anything previous to catch up on, I was just fatigued. They were just so huge and everywhere.
You're right about the execution of everything because they actually went and recorded this album 3 times before they got it right. So third time was the charm. But they went into a studio with two separate producers and fully recorded this album and walked out twice saying, we don't have that sound right. And then it was the third time that it captured what you're talking about.
And my hat's off to them for just standing up and saying, no, it's not
Yeah.
right. Instead of just being eager to put out that
Mm-hmm.
album, they said, no, it's not right. Um, because in what little reading I kind of did was they really were looking to capture how they sounded live, energy
Mm-hmm.
wise, right? And they just weren't going to stop until they got that. Also, in my defense, or maybe this is shots fired, I was also kind of more of a Blur guy.
Oh, significant shots fired.
And I don't even understand because maybe while the early Blur albums, I could kind of see a sound comparison, but like Oasis wasn't going to put out an album like Park
Uh,
Life.
but I was definitely maybe you like how I did that on team Jacob. I mean Team Oasis. You were
Oh,
you were Team
geez.
Edward.
If I could slap you.
But that's because it was easier for me at the time to carry an acoustic guitar up to the campfire or the camp that I was working at and sit at the circle
Oh, I
and sing
agree.
Oasis songs. Like,
Oh, I agree. You're not going to whip up
no, and
Boys
I'm
and
not going to
Girls.
play song two, sitting up to a campfire.
Woohoo! I got my hair.
All right.
Yeah, we don't
Well,
need
there we go.
Jumbo Jet and all
Oasis
that.
was the top album picked for the poll. And cool. It's fun to talk about. Now, Matt and I get to have our own picks, and I get to start.
Yes, you won the coin toss. What are you picking? Oh, I already know what you're picking. Tell
All
everybody
right.
else what you
I'm
picked.
picking Neil Young, Sleeps with Angels. I love this album. If you close your eyes, the very first song, use your imagination, you can almost hear Kermit the Frog singing the lead in the song My Heart.
I kind of want to hear Neil Young sing Rainbow Connection now.
When this album came out, I was in one of those transitions in life and I was kind of between social circles, sitting in a new apartment that I'd bought at night, coming back from work on my own. And I found this place of solitude in it. Change your mind. It still gives me a shiver thinking about Kurt Cobain because this song was kind of a direct dedication to him. And Cobain was a direct driving force for a lot of Neil Young's songwriting on the album.
And I can kind of get how you would have that attachment because when you're in a position where you have to form new connections with people, that means you're saying goodbye to old connections. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a I hate to say death, but there is an end, right? There is an end. There is some mourning there. But most of this album, and I had never listened to this whole album before. It kind of had me thinking that this was a 90s version of Bon Iver. No,
Yeah.
I was really enjoying it though until I hit that 14-minute version of Change Your Mind. What the fudge? I guess I had only heard the radio version of that song until now. Sorry, but I hear songs like this and being a bass player, I start rolling my eyes and go, what am I supposed to do with this drony mess? I had to check my phone. I thought I had it on repeat. Oh my Lord. But the radio edit is a good song.
I was actually pretty forgiving of Neil at the time because when I first started to play guitar, my mentor, Jim Wentworth, was a big Neil Young fan. And he taught me a few of his songs. I learned to play Harvest Moon when he released that album by the same name. And it became so ingrained in me that right now, if I went and grabbed my guitar, pull it up to the mic, I could play it, harmonics and all. I know that song like the back of my hand. And at the time, grunge and the relationship with Pearl Jam that Neil Young had suddenly made it cool to be a Neil Young guy.
Yeah, and I know this is prime Neil Young for you, and that's my only gripe. That long song, and it's a minor one. I put this on the stereo at night last week, and I sat in the middle. I had all four speakers turned on, and it there was some gin and tonic flowing. So I'm not going to say I wasn't under any kind of influence, but the sound of it was amazing. I felt like I was right there in the studio listening to them playing this. Maybe I could have researched this, but Neil is kind of a little bit tight-lipped as far as talking about what stuff
Mm-hmm.
means, how things were done, and that, and I respect this, but this sounds like it was recorded. The guys just in the studio recorded it all live, limited
Yeah.
overdubs, and but then piece of crap came on and ruined the mood. I forgot about that song. This is my theme song for when anything breaks around the house or at work. Piece of crap.
Yeah.
Oh, it brought it back to me.
that,
Now I
that
have it. It's on speed dial in my
that's
brain.
great. All right, that's my pick. Neil Young, Sleeps with Angels. What are you going to take for your album celebrating its anniversary?
Talking Heads, Fear of Music.
Ah,
Uh-oh. I think I picked the wrong one, folks.
I seem to be more into the commercial Talking Head albums. I got to admit that straight away. Sometimes it takes,
Yeah, and you're not
yeah,
alone there.
sometimes it takes a couple of listens to get past the weirdness of their music. I listened to this album this past week and like I hear new wave set to world rhythms. I don't think I always understand the genius of it. I do understand there's genius there, but they don't always draw me back in to wanting to go back and listen to it over again. I think in some instances with the Talking Heads, I'm a greatest hits kind of guy. And I'm not knocking
Yeah, I get
I'm
that.
not knocking their music, but sometimes I wonder if I'm not smart enough to understand it.
Oh, that's a big thing with them. Yeah. And I get that completely. But I also wonder if maybe you just listen to I Zimbra, the first song, on repeat over and over because it leads off and it's got that percussion. It has that world music feel. And when you got a really clean guitar played just right, it does give it that sound. But only lasts for 10 seconds. When the guitar really comes in, there's this little lick he does, and it's reminiscent of burning down the
Mhm.
house. Paper, Cities, they're great talking head songs that they don't sniff world music. At no time do they sound like Rusted Root at all. And hits, yeah, Life During Wartime,
great,
Heaven,
great
still amazing
songs. Yeah.
songs. But you mentioned the biggest problem with talking heads. They do make me feel stupid. They make me feel like a damn dummy. It's music that reminds me that music is art. David Byrne is not your typical singer of a rock band. And people have told me that he throws them off. And I completely get that. He throws me off at times. It's almost understated, but on Animals, he's actually projecting and singing with force. But as I get older, your perspective changes, which thank God it does, or I hold on to the same beliefs and opinions I had my whole life. There are bands like the Rolling Stones that I continue to try to get, but I fail at. But the more I listen to the Talking Heads, the more I find to grab onto. My list of favorite Talking Head songs, it continues to grow. I'm not sure why for them and not for other bands. Maybe I dig the oddity of it all. My brain can kind of go in different directions here, there, everywhere. But there's something with punk music that kind of gets my brain moving in like an Einstein cradle, like tick, 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 tick. Everything just kind of just falls in line. And there's something with the oddity of Talking Heads that kind of fills that same void at
I
times.
think that one of the differences between you and I is that you like unpredictability at times in music,
Yeah.
whereas I like to be able to guess the part. It makes me feel smart to guess what's going to happen next in a song, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
I
I
got
get that.
that. Whereas you, on the other hand, listen to it and appreciate that genius of the change and celebrate it. Whereas I get angry at myself because I couldn't, see that was going to happen. And I played in bands, I played
Yeah,
music, and I should know this is what's,
yeah. And then there's that part of me that will hear and enjoy, a straightforward song that makes logical sense as to how it's, written and everything. But there's also part of me that rails against, why are you just gonna do that same bullshit? Why aren't you gonna think out of the box? You know?
Well, good choice. I'm glad you brought that. I'm gonna say that this album was on the poll, and we have to get a shout out to Kirsty because she voted for it. Kirsty brought
Thank you,
Kirsty brought us
Kirsty.
Taylor Swift, exposure to Paramore. I think this is a great example of respect in the music world. Recently, I think it came out for Record Day this past year, but Paramore covered the Talking Heads. They were part of that big tribute album. They did Burning Down the House. And then David Byrne, on the flip side of the vinyl that came out, covers Hard Times by Paramore, showing some respect back to them. And that is the kind of thing that needs to happen in music, because it has somebody like Kirsty become exposed to the Talking Heads, and then she didn't vote for Christina Aguilera. She voted for the Talking Heads on the poll.
Again, thank you,
Yeah.
Kirsty.
So good stuff. Good stuff.
And I will give a shout
Okay.
out.
Yep.
Hold on,
Yep.
before you move on, I will give a shout out. Tina Weymouth, such a severely undervalued
Just
bass player.
solid. Like,
Oh, solid. But when she does things, she plays with feel. She plays with syncopation. She'll play just off the beat, just a little bit. There's such a groovy
well,
bass player.
there's a pocket that she sits in for them.
Oh
And
yeah.
I do think that a lot of their songs are driven by the melody almost of the bass line.
Oh,
A lot
totally
of the
agree.
guitar work is very simple. It's good. I'm not knocking any of the guitar work.
It's almost background
Yeah, but
music.
the bass is what drives the song even more than anything else within the band. So good shout out. Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Yep.
So we got a couple that we're going to talk about because first of all, the first one I forgot to put in the poll, and I kind of felt bad about
It probably would have
it.
got
Would
some
have gotten
votes.
some votes, so we need to bring this up.
Yeah, Jeff Buckley, Grace. I was a little reluctant to listen to this because I remember my first reaction to this. It did hit me hard. As soon as Mojo Pin comes on, I'm hooked. I got to listen to it all. I don't even need lyrics to get hooked into this because the performance of it is so passionate. You can tell he's feeling the moment when he's performing. He created an intense experience with this
Yeah, I
album.
agree. There's such an authentic feel to it.
Yeah, and it's not always the fastest or the boldest music that makes an impact. It is passionate without being over the top or sappy. It it just feels real.
Mhm.
And if anyone's rolling their eyes because of Hallelujah, listen to that song. It's beautiful. It will never not be beautiful. It's perfect. Just don't listen, at like 1 o'clock in the morning after a bunch of beer. You might have an emotional reaction. And the more I listen to this, the more I feel that we were robbed, that we never got more. But maybe that's sadly what made it so
Yeah, I
special.
definitely think we got robbed, but I'm going to loosely say I think he was also ripped off. If you listen to the first couple of Radiohead albums, they sound nothing like what they became as a band. And shame on me for never really paying attention to Jeff Buckley's Grace when it came out. But when I listened to it this past week, I realized maybe kind of that Tom York ran away with Jeff Buckley's songwriting style. It
You can hear it in his
Oh,
singing.
definitely. And the feel and even some of the grooves, the bass line, the grooves that hold the songs down. So yeah, I don't want to use that word ripped off because I do like to say very heavily influenced at times, but the stylization of this is just too present in Radiohead's albums from OK Computer going forward.
Yeah, and they couldn't have picked a better
No.
influence. The Grace is a superb album. And then the next honorable mention, the last, honorable mention, I guess, it will be Led Zeppelin's In Through the Outdoor. And it's awesome because we get to show some love to an unlikely Zeppelin record. Everyone wants to sing the praises of the early records, but In Through the Outdoor is no slouch.
No.
Too much keyboards for you, not enough blues rips. They're not ripping off enough old blues artists for you. Blame Jimmy Page's addiction because John Paul Jones took the reins. And for my money, it paid
Yep.
off. I won't say it's my favorite Led Zeppelin record, but there are plenty of songs I put on my personal Led Zeppelin playlist. In the evening, All My Love, Fool in the Rain is one of my favorite Zeppelin songs. It's stylistic, it's tight. One of my favorite guitar solos of all time because it's not Jimmy's usual sound. It's melodic. Plants not singing about wizards and trolls. I do have that issue with him. And that middle break it's still hot, man. It's 6 minutes long, but I don't want it any shorter.
Just saying "Fool in the Rain" will now have that groove stuck in my head for the next 3 days.
Oh
Dun,
yeah.
dun, dun,
Especially
dun,
that middle
dun,
part.
dun.
Bum bum ba-dum, bum 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 ba-dum. Oh yeah.
What I love about John Paul Jones on this album, though, is what I've gotten out of the synthesizers here. I don't really have a lot of tolerance for the big 70s organ sounds or long soloing. You talked about the Doors earlier with the Stooges. I can listen to the Doors. I'm happy with Ray Manzarek. Play me some organ.
Keep it short and
Yeah,
sweet. Yeah.
or have a solo that's going to stick song to song and a melody that you can learn the same way you're going to know an Eddie Van Halen guitar solo. But some of these bands in the 70s were doing these really long-winded synthesizer solos, and John Paul Jones does not do that here. He captures a sound that it does not push those boundaries for me. It's great.
Yeah. And I imagine Zepp purists threw up when they heard Carousel Alhambra. But man, I dig that song. It's 10 minutes, but it takes me on a journey. And that's a rarity for me of a song that
Yeah,
long.
come on, Neil Young, get that right for Matt.
Yeah, damn it, Neil Young. Just don't do the same thing for 14 minutes or however long that song was. That was
All right, Matt. Well, that's the end of the show.
yeah. Sorry, Oasis fans, but I had to say what I had to say.
It wasn't so bad. He actually said he became more.
No, it wasn't that bad. I don't have all of London mad at me
No,
or
Matt
Manchester.
also starts off saying, "I really don't like this band," and by the end of whatever he's saying, he's like, "I kind of like this band." By the end of it, so
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
You're right. I did
you
come
did. You
around.
did. It's been a lot of fun to talk about these albums this week. We are going to continue just kind of moving along. We do have subject shows coming, but we're going to nurse those in the right way. And you might hear that next. You might hear September next. September, I'll tell you, Matt, 1989, that's when I started my senior year of high school. So pretty much every album was significant. But
There's a long list.
there's a long list, but there's a lot for us to talk about coming out in the September episode, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, we want to take a little bit more time with our subject shows. Make not that they're going to be a more of a long form format, but the subjects maybe are a little more long form. We want to make sure we do our due
We do.
diligence.
And we want to make sure that we've got the albums that the audience are picking for us to talk about. And like we've said, come on, people. Blues Traveler 4. Matt hates this album. You could vote on this for the next show, and he's going to have to go listen to
Stop,
it.
stop right there. Why are you encouraging everybody? Oh my God. Oh
And you
man,
know
I'm
what?
gonna have to pull
At
out.
the end of it,
I gotta find your
at the
kryptonite.
end of it, he's going to be like, well, it wasn't so bad. I kind of liked it at the end.
Bullshit. Oh man, my freaking feedback monitor popped up. I was yelling the big old F bombs on you, Jim. Yeah, no, I don't think I'll ever come around a blues traveler. I admire harmonica playing and I would like to be able to play it, but I would just like to be playing it on better songs than what blues
Well,
traveler.
we'll just have to see what the audience chooses. All right. Well, let's get out of here so we can get on to the next show. I think it's my turn to wrap it up.
It's always your turn to wrap it up. Just
I'll
wrap it up. We want to say goodbye to everybody and thank you for listening to the Jam Remote. I did your job.
There you go. It was a great time. It was always fun to talk to you, Matt. And I look forward to talking many more episodes of these album anniversaries because this has been the right direction for us to go in. Audience, go out and vote on our Facebook group page. If you don't know us,
Just not for Blues Traveler.
if you don't know us, just look up the Jam Yearbook. You'll find it. It's private. There's, a question you can answer. Are you cool? Even if you get it wrong, we'll still might let you know. So just do that. Hey, everybody. Matt, say goodnight.
Good night, Matt.
Peace, love, and podcast.
Lost in